You know, out of all the Sonic games that have come and gone, I think Sonic Forces might just be the most disappointing of them all. Don't let the Sonic fandom gaslight you into believing that Forces isn't bad. On its own, yeah, Forces is not a bad game, just painfully mediocre. However, when you take into context the timing of a release and the marketing of Forces, it all just becomes more and more infuriating that this was the result. The worst part is, on paper, Sonic Forces should have been the best Sonic game ever. It has so many great ideas that could have easily lended themselves to an amazing experience if the game just put in the effort. I mean, just think about it for a second. A Sonic game where Robotnik has taken over the entire world and you have to fight to get it back, while uncovering the mystery of a new villain and joining Sonic with your own original character. This was every Sonic fan's dream! So how'd they screw it up? Well, let's find out. It still doesn't make sense to me. By generations, they had perfected both modern Sonic gameplay, and while classic Sonic's wasn't exactly as one-to-one as a classic should be, it was still incredibly fun. So how did they manage to downgrade a gameplay style they'd perfected literally 6 years prior? Well, you could very much start off with how both classic and modern Sonic control. Modern Sonic's levels are significantly worse than Generations, mostly because of the level design and the length of the stages. Modern Sonic's levels are so embarrassingly linear that it kind of makes most of the levels just pressing the boost button to get to the end of a stage. And when the game does decide to deviate from this, it's always the laziest attempts to give the player an illusion of skill. Take for instance, the QuickTime events. The way the QTEs are in Forces is honestly really boring. You're just expected to hit the button when you see the obvious prompt, and then the game plays itself. But the QTEs are so slow, the chances of you messing up are almost zero. You never feel that rush to complete it. Let's compare this with a different instance of QTE in Sonic. Sonic Unleashed has the best QTEs. The moment you hit a ramp and those button prompts popped up, you instinctively tried to react faster. You could probably even feel the adrenaline in your blood rise because you had to read, interpret, locate, and react to the button prompts all within the span of 5 seconds or less. This made the QTEs more difficult, sure, but it also made them far more exhilarating. And when you did manage to pull them off, it was extremely satisfying because the game actually presented you with a challenge. Forces is made for infants. The game refuses to challenge the player in any way, and when it does, it's because of poor design, not intended difficulty. Like in this stage, where it's incredibly difficult to even see the player because of how zoomed out the camera is and how messy the background is. Although there is one thing modern Sonic Forces does right, and it's something that I'm actually surprised wasn't in the previous boost titles. I'm talking about the air boost. If you boost while in the air or as you jump, Sonic will continue boosting in the air as you hold down the boost button. This leads to you getting some serious airtime if you time your jumps correctly. Just felt like pointing that out as one positive thing about the gameplay here, as I do want to give Forces as much credit as I can, no matter how small that credit may be. And another thing I've got to give Forces credit for is the custom character. This is arguably the best aspect of Forces, even if I do feel it's a tad underdeveloped. The most fun part about this game would definitely be trying to create your own custom character. And you know, for what it's worth, the level of customization is honestly pretty decent. Although it'd be nice if there was more reasonable customization outside of cosmetics, because let's be real, the animal types barely make a difference, and the Wispin you use is most likely going to be the Burst Wispin or the Lightning Wispin, as all the other ones are simply not as useful. And then we've got Classic Sonic. I just don't get it. Classic Sonic is without a doubt the worst element in Forces. It's not even a contest. I don't know what they did, but Classic Sonic controls way worse here than he did in Generations. He feels heavy and slow. He can't go up slopes without a dash panel. I mean, in Generations, Classic Sonic was so fun because he was quick and agile. You could charge up the spin dash and blast across the level. Now, Classic Sonic just feels like he's here to pad the playtime of the game, which I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. Sonic Forces is a game that takes 3 hours to beat, even less if you're good at Sonic games. There is no excuse for how short this game is. Most of the modern Sonic stages take less than 2 minutes to complete, and because of this, no level really ends up sticking in your head, aside from the set pieces they present. And speaking of set pieces, we've got to talk about this game's presentation. I've seen a few people say that Forces is just as, if not better, than Sonic Colors. And while I can understand why someone may think that due to the similarity in gameplay of Forces and Colors, the biggest difference is presentation. Sonic Colors appropriately treats itself like an amusement park with many short but enjoyable rides, with great music and great visuals. And Colors is also able to outperform Forces because it has fun and interesting gimmicks that, when combined with the levels themselves and the presentation, make for a really good game experience. And largely, Colors is able to do this by committing to its own premise. It's an easy, fun game with a simple, fun story. Forces is a game that's trying to do everything and ends up doing nothing right, because Forces does not commit to its own ideas. It never goes the full mile, but instead stops quarter way there when it realizes that it does not have the budget or time to go through with those ideas, which leads to cases such as the waste of Green Hill. The first level in Forces is attempting to do something that, on paper, is pretty interesting. You start with Green Hill, the Green Hill you're very familiar with, and then as you continue, well, Green Hill looks a lot more like Green Hill looks more and more desolate, signifying that you're following Eggman's path of destruction. The problem is, they don't go the full distance with this idea. Halfway through the level, they just fill it with sand, and this is supposed to show that Green Hill is suffering? Good idea, bad execution. First of all, they should try and set this feeling of dread way better by having Sonic shut up, or at least have some dialogue that makes it seem like he's taking the situation seriously. One idea I had could be maybe once a trigger is hit, like, where the sand starts appearing, the music slowly fades out, leaving the player with an unnerving feeling, truly highlighting the severity of a situation. Or maybe just change the color palette to be more dark, I don't know. This game's presentation almost never reflects what the story is trying to tell you. Like, there's never a sense of urgency or danger. Remember how in Sonic Adventure 2 they managed to make you feel the absolute urgency of Green Forest just by having the appropriate music and a timer in the corner of the screen? Forces never once manages to recreate such a feeling because it never tries to sell you on the conflict of the story. And oh boy, does the story suck. Sonic Forces wastes what is arguably the best idea for a Sonic plot ever. The idea of Eggman winning is definitely not original or groundbreaking, but the execution of such a plot could very much lead to some of the best drama the series has to offer. And once again, on paper, the story of Forces is great. Sonic is defeated, and without his help, the other characters just don't have what it takes to fight against Eggman's enormous army, so they enlist the help of new recruits, and your original character just so happens to be there. Notice how classic Sonic is completely irrelevant to the plot? Yeah, you can just toss him aside. The problem is how the game chooses to have the story play out. First of all, Eggman has no presence. Not in the story, and definitely not in the game. In Unleashed, you feel Eggman's terror just from the opening cutscene alone. And when the game really wants you to know that Eggman is in charge, you get Eggman Land. A stage that is almost comically oppressive in not just its gameplay but its presentation. As I was reviewing this footage of Forces that I stole from some other YouTube channels, I noticed something. Eggman takes over the entire world, right? But where's his insignia? In previous games, Eggman has his insignia on his ships, his weapons, in his damn pool, and now he's proven his superiority by taking over the entire world, and there's just nothing. And I'm not gonna point out how Gun or any previously established human entities seem to just be completely absent from the game, because it's pretty obvious that the answer to any questions posed by this is just don't think about it. Once again, good idea, but bad execution. It's so obvious that this game's story was haphazardly put together. There are moments that straight up don't make any sense. Like this scene.
Possible. Your ability capabilities exceed your previous data.
Why is Infinite talking like this? He's not a robot, just some insecure loser who got beat up by Shadow. And let's not forget about the whole Classic Sonic thing as well. So Classic Sonic is now from an alternate dimension, not the past. Okay, and then we can continue to talk about the characters being absolutely butchered in this then. Like Tails cowering in fear, begging for Sonic to save him when Chaos attacks him, even though we know that Sonic is presumed dead. That brings me to something else Forces does. This game continues its false marketing even into its cutscenes. The dialogue of stuff such as,
"And Tails has just lost it."
Torturing Sonic just to pass the time. Oh, that's low, even for Eggman.
The game is trying to trick you into thinking its story is more interesting than it actually is. The game definitely has the biggest tonal issues out of any Sonic game. I mean, there's a scene where Infinite literally kills people, and then there's a scene where Sonic calls Infinite a loser for having no friends. It is incredibly jarring. There's just so much wrong about this game's story. It's flawed and broken, but I doubt I can actually say anything that you probably haven't already heard, so I'm just gonna move on to what I consider to be the biggest sin of Sonic Forces. At the beginning of this video, I alluded to the public perception of Forces within the Sonic fandom changing over the years. I need to make my next point very clear. If you like Forces, that's fine. You're entitled to your own opinion, and your experience with this game does not need to align with the experience of others. However, you have to remember and understand that the reason Forces was so hated and has left such a sour taste in the mouths of many fans, myself included, is because the game was advertised as everything the Sonic fanbase wanted at the time. Forces released just 3 months after Mania, one of the most critically acclaimed Sonic games. But not only was Forces the next mainline Sonic game, it was the next 3D mainline Sonic game since Sonic Lost World that came out 4 years prior. 4 years prior to Forces was a game that received mixed reviews and was generally disliked by the fanbase. 3 years prior to Forces was the infamous spin-off series Sonic Boom, which, with its bad Wii U game, had effectively alienated many fans from the future of the series. By 2017, most Sonic fans wanted either a return to traditional platforming or a continuation of a formula that Unleashed, Colors, and Generations had essentially perfected in the 3-year gap between those games. You have to understand that between Sonic Unleashed and Sonic Generations, there was just a 3-year gap. Naturally, the expectations of a 3-year gap between Sonic Boom and Sonic Forces was something of similar quality to Generations. This expectation was only heightened when it was revealed that Classic Sonic would be playable alongside Modern Sonic. Many people at this point assumed that we'd be getting a sequel to Generations or a game of similar quality, and after Sonic Mania released, the goodwill for Sonic was at an all-time high. Forces continued to market itself as the Sonic game that would appease most of a divided fanbase. It was marketing itself as this ambitious magnum opus for the Sonic series. It was marketing itself as a return to the more serious storylines of Sonic games from the 2000s. It was marketing itself as something it was not, and this had to have been intentional. They had to have heard the criticisms of the narratives in the most recent Sonic games feeling too juvenile. That's why they attempt to have such a serious storyline. They had to have heard the clamor for the return of older characters in the franchise. That's why all of the main cast is here even when they're not relevant. I think the biggest example of everything wrong with Forces marketing comes from the E3 trailer. Here we have our heroes seemingly face off against Shadow, Zavok, Metal Sonic, and Chaos. And out of all these 4 characters, you get to fight a total of 2 of them in the real game. This right here is a perfect analogy for what Forces was to many fans. It was half the game we were expecting, but it was marketed and sold as so much more. Sonic Forces is not just a mediocre game. It's a betrayal to a community that has been nothing but supportive for a franchise that time and time and time again misses the mark where it matters most. This is why Forces is so hated, and why the hate surrounding the game is justified. You cannot just take Forces as it is in a vacuum and expect to understand what made the game so insulting. And even with all that, we're still here, waiting for the next Sonic game to come out and praying to Sega that it's gonna be good. We Sonic fans are truly something else. Sonic Forces is not a bad game. Sonic Forces is, in my opinion, a statement. A statement that warns of the dangers of blind consumerism and the power of false marketing. Sonic Forces is a game with good ideas, but bad execution. Thanks for watching.